Welcome to Wannabe Clutter Free, formerly Wannabe Minimalist, the podcast for busy families who are tired of the chaos, fed up with being overwhelmed, and ready to enjoy life again. Each week, we talk about how to let go of the clutter so that you can focus on the things that actually matter. And it's not just physical clutter, we talk about the mental and emotional stuff too, because if it's holding you back, it's time to ditch it. I share what I've done in my own life to declutter, organize, and calm the chaos, but you won't just hear it from me. There are amazing guests too. It's practical, doable, and simple for those of us that want to be clutter-free. Peppermint lattes, cozy nights by the fire, and seasonal dry air that brings sniffles and dry, cracked skin. Well, two of these things I love, and the other, well, for that, I turn to a name that's been trusted for over a century: Vicks. Their humidifiers aren't just simple solutions, they're proven to combat those tough winter ailments effectively. With indoor humidity levels dropping below 40% in the winter, issues like stuffy noses, dry, itchy skin, and chapped lips become all too common. Vicks humidifiers help maintain indoor humidity at an ideal 40 to 60%, providing relief from these discomforts. In our home, I've set up Vicks humidifiers in every bedroom. Adding Vicks VapoPads and VapoSteam into the mix transforms each room into a sanctuary of comfort. The familiar scent of Vicks Vapo takes me back to those childhood days when this was my mom's go-to for cold relief. It's a sensory experience that spells relief and care. If you're ready to transform your winter experience and bring soothing comfort into your home, there's a special offer on Amazon for the Vicks Cool Relief Humidifier where you can get 20% off your purchase. Just go to Amazon.com and search Vicks VUL 600 Cool Relief Humidifier. It has a blue tank with white in the center. Just be sure to click on that coupon to get the discount. You need this for wintertime comfort. Well, hey there, my friend. Welcome back to the show. My name is Deanna Yates, and you are listening to episode 232 of the Wannabe Clutter-Free podcast. On today's episode, I am chatting with Jill Sirianni about how we can simplify our home and why simplifying our home will help us simplify our finances as well. It is a great conversation. She and I mesh on so many levels where we like this entire holistic approach to our lives and how everything is interconnected. So I really think you're going to love this episode too. And I do want to take 1 second before I introduce Jill to say thank you so much to you for joining me. I know you have a lot of choices when it comes to podcasts, and I really appreciate that you are here. All right, let's learn more about Jill. Jill Sirianni is a licensed clinical social worker, co-host of the Frugal Friends podcast, and co-author of Buy What You Love Without Growing Broke. She's experienced in doing a lot with a little, from starting small businesses to full-time RVing, and all of it was leveraged to pay off $60,000 of debt and cash flow her master's degree. Helping others is her highest value, and integrating her mental health perspective with personal finance is how she supports others to identify and live out what they value most. Think you are really going to love this episode, so let's not wait any further and we'll dive on in. Well, hi Jill, welcome to Wanna Be Clutter Free. How you doing today?
Hi, Deanna. So good. So glad to be here.
Thank you so much for coming to talk to us. We are going to talk about basically this intersection of our home and our stuff and how we can set up our homes so that we can actually save money because you are from the Frugal Friends podcast. So, but if people don't know who you are, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you help busy moms with their lives?
Absolutely. Yeah. So my name is Jill. I am a co-host of the Frugal Friends podcast and co-author of Buy What You Love Without Going Broke. And we have been talking for 6.5 years about the skill of spending. And this is one of the ways that we help moms, help people to be able to manage money in a guilt-free, individualized way. My background is in social work. So I bring the mental health perspective to this, recognizing that we are whole people and the decisions that we make in one aspect of our lives impacts all these other aspects of our lives. And our finances aren't just off part of our being, but they can be integrated decisions to the rest of our lives. And we can learn and become more confident in the ways in which we're managing money, which can really help to simplify life, simplify our decisions, and help us just focus on the other things that really matter and are important to us.
Love that. First off, the holistic approach. I am all about it. Yes, everything is interconnected in our lives, right? Whether that's obviously the money we have, which then allows us to buy the stuff we have in our homes, and then vice versa, the stuff we have in our homes making us feel either energized and good or bringing us down and making us feel guilty and adding this level of weight. And I do think they are so interconnected in so many different areas. I love it. And one thing you said there was the skill of spending. I just think that is it's so interesting looking at it from that perspective. And so can you tell us a little bit more about that? That just popped out at me.
Absolutely. I think none of us really are taught the skill of spending. We're not even taught that it's a skill. We're taught that you're either a spender or a saver, and it's
Ooh.
bad to be a spender. And all of these myths around needing to only spend on your needs and not your wants. And it's so convoluted because my needs include food, but my wants include yummy food. So where do we draw the line on that? And so, really coming at it from this perspective that we all spend, we all make
Mhm.
spending decisions, even if we have a propensity towards saving, or if we would consider ourselves a person who, oh, I got this one in the bag. I know how to spend money. But we're talking about how to spend money well, how to manage all of our resources well. It's not something that most of us have seen uh, given good examples of. We've not been taught how to make wise, informed, non impulsive spending decisions that we actually feel really good about, that is devoid of the guilt and shame, and recognizing that this is a skill set that is desperately needed, especially for us women who largely, for most of us in the state, manage the money in households. We are the primary
Mhm.
spending decision makers. And when we can feel really confident about the ways in which we are approaching our money and the decisions we're making around them, and really confident about the purchases we're making, where our money is going, that just leads to confidence across the board. But again, recognizing there's a skill set here and it's not a personality trait. It is something that can be learned, can be honed, can be improved upon, and we can feel really good about.
So good. And who had a little bit of guilt coming up there when you were talking about that because I do feel like I've had to overcome a lot of this guilt with spending. I don't know why. I don't really oh boy. This is interesting. I don't know. Just all of a sudden that kind of popped up for me of yeah, that is one of the skills that I absolutely need to work on better. I have the propensity to save, but it might be because I have a layer of guilt with the spending. Also, my husband and I spent our 20s being entrepreneurs. So I think we were very thrifty with money because obviously, if you're bootstrapping a business, every dollar counts. And so I just think a lot of that has come back in my life. So if someone's listening to this and they're thinking, huh, okay, some feelings of guilt are coming up. This is maybe a little bit different than we were going to talk. We'll hop into the holistic in our homes a little bit. But what would you say to someone like me that's sitting here going, I got to work on this a little bit?
First of all, you're not alone. The reason I talked about guilt free spending is because for most of us, we don't really experience that. These
Mm.
feelings of, oh, I shouldn't have bought that, or why did I spend that much money, or I just sweating sometimes around
Yeah.
purchasing decisions. And a lot of that does have to do with the ways that we've been trained to think about money, that spending is wrong, it's bad, it's a moral failure, that you should only be spending on your needs. And so anytime we allow ourselves to have a little treat or a luxury, there can be this tinge of guilt and shame around it, especially if we have other money goals that we say we want to achieve, like investing for retirement or paying off debt. It can feel especially debilitating, or like you're describing, Deanna, going through times, seasons of life where money is really tight. For me, coming from the social work background, when I graduated from college and I was in my first career, I was earning less than the total amount of debt that I owed. And I know that's a lot of
Mm.
people's stories. And this holding the tension of how to be able to still live life and spend on the things that I love and want to spend on while also still achieving some of these goals can be really difficult. But I think part of the solution is in recognizing some of these myths around spending, beginning to tell ourselves that spending is a skill and I can get better at it, and allowing ourselves to be influenced by some of these voices who can help with that. But another key element here is aligning our spending with the things that matter to us. I think sometimes we can feel a little bit untethered with our purchasing decisions, which can lead to guilt because we don't know necessarily the purpose behind it or what it's attached to. But when we can feel more intentional about how we're spending money, then that can help to reduce the guilt because it's something we've planned for. We've identified our own values, the things that we want to be spending money on. And we can, again, have that confidence to say, this is something I know that I want to spend on. It's something that I have the money for, and I can feel really good about it because there's been thought, there's been a process of discovery behind this to know that there's congruence here in my spending behaviors with the things that matter to me. That doesn't happen overnight. There's a whole process to get there. A lot of that we talk about in our book. But
Yeah.
yeah, there's a couple of key ways that we can push back on some of that guilt. And we can find ourselves in this place of shame free money management.
Love that. Shame free money management is what you just mentioned. There's a lot going on there, but it does make me think of how I often approach the items in our home as well. So, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about simplifying our physical spaces and how that might impact our mindset and decision making when it comes to managing our money as well. We'll be right back. Dee, 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 dee. Okay, awesome. All right, welcome back. So, Jill, right before the break, I was going to ask you about we're going to start connecting our finances with our whole personhood and basically going into our physical spaces. So, can you explain how simplifying our physical spaces might impact our mindset and this decision making, which you were talking about, making this decision and knowing where our money's going? And so, how that might actually affect our money management?
Absolutely. I have three ways that simplifying our physical spaces can impact our money management. But I first want to talk a little bit about some cognitive biases, or just one
Yeah.
at least in particular, and that is complexity bias. I think sometimes I've caught myself wondering, why is it that we have to talk about simplicity so much and being clutter free? And yet, so many of us want that. We say that we want that. There's so many podcasts, wonderful podcasts like yours. We talk a lot about simplifying it on our show as well. And people really eat it up. And yet, why do we continue to struggle with this? And one of the things that I came across in trying to understand this more is complexity bias. We are drawn to complexity for one reason or another. It's one of the shortcuts that our brain wants to take in an odd way to simplify things for us. We're just going to be
Yeah.
drawn to choosing more complex decisions, lifestyles. There was actually a study done that we reference in the book that we just wrote, where participants were given a series of problems to solve where multiple solutions were possible. And in every single scenario, participants chose the additive solutions rather than the subtractive ones, often choosing the more complex over the simple. This happens to us even in our purchasing decisions, a lot of times in the ways that maybe we even manage our household. I was just at the store recently in the personal care aisles and saw on this facial serum something like 100% pure, refined, first pressed. And it all looked so lovely and complicated that I thought, oh, yeah, that's so much happening there. It's probably going to be great for my skin. Only to realize I don't know what that means. Marketers are really tapping into the fact that I don't know what this means, but because it seems really complex, I'm going to think, oh,
Yeah.
that's for me. I don't know what
Sounds
I'm talking
great.
about. You obviously do. So I'm going to get
Mhm.
this 100% pure, refined, first pressed thing and slather it on my face. And that's just an example, but this happens across the board where we think something is so much more complicated than it actually is. Not to say that there aren't complex or complicated things, but I think money is one of those good examples where we think investing is so complicated, understanding money management is so complicated. And sometimes that means that we abandon all opportunities to learn or get better or improve this skill. And I'm one of the voices here to say that it can be easy, it can be simple, and we can recognize and push back against this complexity bias where it's not serving us, where it's not actually providing mental shortcuts that are going to be beneficial. And one of those ways is in simplifying our environments. So to get into those top
Yeah.
3 ways,
Well, let's
the
hang on. Before
yeah,
we
go
get into
ahead.
that, though, I want to ask you okay, so you're saying with the complexity bias, we actually will make things more complex. So we will bury our head in the sand and not do them? Or we find more value and we try to do things that are more complex than they need to be because we think that's a better solution? Let's talk gift giving. Ever find yourself stressing out over finding the perfect holiday gift? Maybe you're buying a gift for someone who has everything already. And if you're on a clutter freedom journey, well, you sure don't want to be the person adding to someone else's clutter. So if you're tired of buying things that just end up as more clutter around the house, but you still want to give a physical gift, I've got the perfect solution for you. Introducing the Skylight Frame. It's a touchscreen digital photo frame that's bound to be a hit with the entire family. Imagine a beautiful frame where you can upload thousands of photos in seconds right from your phone. It's incredibly user friendly, and you don't even need an account or subscription to start sharing memories. My parents have one and they absolutely love it. They tell me so every time we chat. And they see the new photos we send instantly, and they can even tap the heart button to thank us right from the frame. And the best part, we preloaded it with photos for a truly magical unboxing experience. Now, as a special limited time offer for our listeners, you can get $20 off your purchase of a skylight frame when you go to skylightframe.com/wannabe. That's skylightframe.com/wannabe. Get $20 off your purchase now at skylightframe.com/wannabe. Struggling with gift ideas? What if I told you you could gift your loved one the ability to learn from a top expert they love and wished they could hang out with? Like, I know my bestie is a huge fan of Martha Stewart and Sarah Blakely, and that's what makes Masterclass such a perfect gift. She can take classes from both of them. With Masterclass, you can give the gift of learning from the very best in the world. Imagine having access to over 200 of the most talented and celebrated instructors across a variety of fields. From writing and cooking to interior design and personal styling, there is something for everyone. Speaking from personal experience, since my home has been decluttered, I'm now diving into classes on interior design that I'm using to truly transform my living space into a sanctuary. Masterclass isn't just another streaming service, it's a gateway to self improvement and personal growth. 88% of members report a positive impact on their lives thanks to the practical knowledge and inspiring stories shared by instructors like James Clear on habit formation and Esther Perel on building stronger relationships. This holiday season, Masterclass has some incredible offers, sometimes up to 50% off. So don't wait. Head over to masterclass.com/clutterfree to check out their current offer. That's masterclass.com/clutterfree for up to 50% off. Give the gift of lifelong learning at masterclass.com/clutterfree. Or is it a little bit of both? Or can it be both?
A little bit more of the second one,
Okay.
where if given opportunities to identify a solution, we will
Uh-huh.
often go for the more complex one. To break it down again, give another example, like organizing our kitchen. A lot of times, instead of just beginning with the simplest drawer, we start with the most
The whole thing.
complicated, either the whole thing or the sentimental kitchen
Mm.
items that have been passed down. We will think that we need to buy this entire kitchen organizing set and we're going to do all of the research first, when in reality, we could just begin at the
Mhm.
easiest, most simple place with time limitations. And there's a lot of other cognitive biases that are at play, even in that scenario. But just the fact that we can be drawn to complexity, it can be one of the reasons that our homes can become more cluttered than we'd want them to be. It can be one of the reasons that we keep more than we even need to keep, because we think that having this more complicated setup is actually what's going to make us more productive. when in reality, a lot of times the simpler setup can
Mhm.
help us be more productive and
Okay.
efficient.
Got it. Thank you. Okay, thanks for clearing that up. I don't know. I wasn't quite following, but that made it
Yeah.
really clear. So thank you. Okay. Now you're going to talk about the three ways simplifying our home can simplify our spending decisions. So how does this work?
Yeah. So, first of all, decreases stress and frees up
Mm.
time when we are able to simplify our physical spaces. Now, I also want to provide the caveat that I'm not talking about simplification for the sake of minimalism or some aesthetic that we see on Instagram, but rather simplification as it makes sense to each of us individually. We can have a lot of things and still be living simply. We can also have not a lot of things and still be living simply. So there's definitely room for all of us to find ourselves somewhere on this spectrum and individualize this for ourselves. But where we are able to simplify our physical spaces and actually experience that tangibly, we can experience decreased stress, which can also help us to free up our time. Another study that we looked at when writing the book was involved 60 women who were asked for a tour of their home, and the ones who believed their homes to be messy had increased cortisol levels just at the request. And I also want to provide the caveat here that these were women who perceived their homes to be messy. So perception has a whole lot to do with this. And similarly, in another study, women who were asked to give a tour of their home, those who felt like they had a chaotic kitchen made poorer food choices than those who didn't. So this just kind of highlights not just the simplicity of our homes, but also our perceptions of how simple, how decluttered our spaces feel, and the ways in which we engage with other people, whether we are experiencing heightened stress levels, whether we are maybe not making the best food choices for ourselves because of the ways in which our environment is impacting some of those decisions. Our stuff, as I'm sure Deanna, demands our attention. It requires constant decision making. I
Mhm.
feel my things calling out to me sometimes. Like
Totally.
I'm not actually hearing voices.
Let's be clear. Let's be
Please don't
clear.
judge me. But it can feel as though there's this
Yeah,
presence where it's clean me, fix me, replace me,
absolutely.
organize me, use me. Remember when you bought me and you thought that we'd be engaging in this activity all the time? And this stuff calls to us. It demands
Mhm.
our attention. And so I think the less that we have, or the more that we can be really intentional about these decisions, the more that we can engage in our space in a more peaceful way. I also know, related to this whole stress thing, that we can be likely to disproportionately respond to other stimuli if our environment feels really chaotic. For me personally, I get really irritable. If I have laundry all over the place, I am going to snap at my loved ones a lot more quickly than if I didn't. And it happens. I'm not saying
Mhm.
never have laundry anywhere, but I think it's recognizing, how does the stuff impact us? How do these
Yeah.
little conversations with my things on a daily basis impact my emotional and relational reserve? And when we can find ways to make our homes work for us, our environments feel more peaceful, less cluttered, more simplified, we have then more energy to be making decisions like financial ones that we can feel more peaceful about. Again, if I'm feeling irritable because of my physical surroundings, I'm going to be less likely to make wise financial decisions, wise spending decisions. So having decreased stress can allow us to make more informed and some of those values-based spending decisions that I was talking about. It gives us more space to understand ourselves, which is only going to lead to benefit across the board.
Absolutely love that. That is so true. I found myself being really like having a moment of tension. My husband is buying a work computer and then it's going to be reimbursed, right? And so he decided he didn't want one and he bought a different one, but he'd already bought it, needed to be returned. And I was supposed to make the payment on a certain day and it's not late, but I didn't make the payment on the day I was supposed to. I got busy and I forgot about it. And now he's trying to buy the second computer. Now computers are not cheap. And I'm just like, I had a moment of like annoyance, but it wasn't at him. It was at the fact that I didn't make that payment. And so now I was like, oh, eh, ugh, is that going to be too much on the card? Like, how am I going to feel about that much money being on the card? And it's all silly, like, it's all none of it's gonna in the end, like, all the money, like, the one will be returned and the other one will be reimbursed. It's not even money that I owe or have to pay, but I just still had this sticking moment, and so right, all of these little decisions that can come up throughout the day when it was just something simple that I had forgotten to do, but yet my action was now causing this tension for no particular reason. And it was just a moment of like realization. And so I think we have these moments of realization as things get simpler. We can have a moment of like, wait, hold up, take a second. Why are you feeling this way? And being able to then communicate. And as I've been saying lately, use more words. Just use more
Yeah.
words. I
Yeah.
don't care if they don't make sense. Just say what you're thinking in your head. And I'm trying to practice that more in my life as well. Because when we're communicating with our loved ones, sometimes we forget to say the words and we're just think, can't you read my mind? And so anyway, I was trying to use more words last night because this just literally happened last night. So it's just a story that came to my head, but yes, how these all of these little decisions and things being a little more simple can help us have that moment to breathe, to make those realizations. But you're going to come back to the next two. We're going to take a quick break and then we'll come back and hear those next two. I can't wait. All right, welcome back. Jill, take it away.
So the second way that simplifying our physical space can help us with our spending decisions is that it helps us to define our enough.
Mm,
Imagine for you, Deanna, and many of your listeners, you've gone through various, whether it's declutter challenges or
oh, yeah.
simplification efforts or organizing efforts. And as we interact with our stuff, and go through this process and even find ourselves in the maintenance stage, we are refining the things that we actually enjoy, the things that matter to us, the things that we value. And identifying our enough looks different for everyone. And we can definitely Goldilocks this thing of what's too much, what's too little, what's just right. And every season might bring new aspects to it. And we're in this constant process of collecting and purging and giving and collecting and purging. And that's okay too. But I think we can come to this place of I'm experiencing enough. I can find contentment in my space now. I don't need
Mhm.
to purchase more decor because I've so refined what my house looks like, the things that I want to be engaging in my house on a regular basis. And that experience of simplification was a little painful and I don't want to have to do that all the time.
Yeah.
And I'd rather just maintain the progress that I've experienced. And so when we are able to do that with our physical things, it helps lay this foundation of identifying what's enough for me? Where
Mhm.
can I find contentment? And as we exercise that reality, it can keep us from spending on the things that we don't actually want or need and decrease our impulse purchases. Not to mention, we just have a better handle on the things that we already have in our home. A lot of times when we haven't gone through a process of simplifying our tangible things, we forget that we already have three fall flavored sort of scented, not flavored. I don't eat my candles. Y'all are gonna think I'm crazy. We already have 3 fall scented candles at home. We already
Yeah.
have decor packed away for the holidays. We already have whatever it is, fill in the blank, or
Mhm.
I can actually do without because I've done without for all this time and I can
Yep.
find my enough in this place. And so that has a direct correlation with then the spending decisions that we can make and the things that can often lead us to impulse purchases.
Yeah, love that. I actually just decluttered a pumpkin candle a
That's
couple weeks ago because it was that, you know what? I had this last year and I didn't burn it. I made it just fine. I'm going to let go and let somebody else have this and maybe they'll enjoy it more than I do cuz turns out I actually prefer a fresher scent and so, yeah, having that moment of this is enough. I didn't use it last year. I can let go of it. Absolutely. Yeah.
My third reasoning for simplifying our physical spaces for the benefits that it has on our money is that it lays the foundation for habits and
Mm,
mindset practices, similar to defining our enough as we allow ourselves to go through this process of decluttering, simplifying, minimizing our spaces in a way that makes sense for us. We are beginning to build new habits and new mindsets around our things, learning to prioritize what matters to us,
yeah.
learning how to move through the sentimental pieces and really think critically about how do I actually use these kitchen gadgets and
Mm,
what clothing am I actually wearing? And then as we maintain the work that we've done from there, we can experience some of those habits that come with that, whether it's a more advantageous cleaning schedule because we don't have as much to clean and organize and maintain,
yeah.
learning how to say no to bringing different things into our homes, finding more efficiency in our daily practices, just again, more simplification in our spaces is going to, like we talked about earlier, we are whole people. It's going to impact all these other areas. So our ability to say no to the stuff in our home or bringing in new stuff helps us in our ability to say no to spending on things that aren't actually going to meet our needs or bring us any type of value or align with our values. And again, identifying what we value in our things helps us to identify our values and what we end up spending on. So a lot of the foundations that are laid here, like I would even argue that to begin by simplifying your physical space would be an excellent spot to begin if you want to improve your money management because
Yeah.
so much of what you do, the process that you go through, the thoughts that you're going to be engaging in are the exact same types of processes and skill sets that are going to help you in some of the money decisions that are going to come up.
So interesting. Right. And then you also find, right, because you obviously have to spend your money to buy the things in your home. And if you can have these moments of, I have enough, I feel fulfilled, I don't need this thing, I want this thing. Okay. So if I want this thing, maybe I put it on my gift list, my wish list for the holidays that are coming up. And just having that moment of pause, I think can really help us. And then, yes, once you're starting to do that in your physical space, then yeah, you're going to start to see the results in your pocketbook. Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely. And I do want to clarify, you mentioned the needs versus wants
Yeah.
piece. And I think it's really hard to remove that from our vernacular, but I do think we can spend on both our needs and our want. Again, it's why we titled our book
Yeah.
Buy What You Love Without Going Broke, because we do believe we can spend on what we love. But it's also one of the things that help to inform this perspective is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I'm sure you're
Yeah.
familiar with this. It's that triangle of all the various types of our needs at the very bottom being our physiological needs, our safety needs, food, clothing, shelter, followed by needs of belonging and esteem, and at the tippy top, self fulfillment. And I think one of these lies that, or myths at least, that we've been sold is that our needs are just that bottom layer. It is our
Mm,
physiological needs that we should only be spending on food, clothing, and shelter. And all other things are peripheral, luxurious, and a stain on your character if you're spending on these other things. And we would argue that all of these are needs. All of these deserve for us to be able to spend on them. The catch here, though, that we've also found is that what we truly value generally is true for all of us, and this is research backed, is what we call the four F's: faith, family, friends, and fulfilling work. That for the majority of us, these are the core of what we would all say that we value. Connected with all of the needs of our own personhood based on that hierarchy of needs. The trouble is because we feel as though we can't spend money, we end up spending on things to meet these deeper needs, to meet these core values. But unfortunately, so often they don't actually meet the need. It's
mm,
not actually buying the pumpkin spice latte candle is not. actually helping me get closer to faith, family, friends, fulfilling work. Not that we can't buy those things, but recognizing that so often, especially our impulse spending decisions, are to meet one of our deeper core needs. And when we're not aware of that, when we're not thoughtful about how can I actually spend money towards these things that truly do matter, the four F's, then we can find ourselves spending impulsively on all of these other things that we just end up feeling guilty about afterwards, in part because it fell short. It didn't actually hit the mark of some of the core needs that we're experiencing. And some of this is recognizing we can spend, we can value anything. We're not going to be able to value everything, though, and beginning some of that prioritization and recognizing how can I spend all of my resources, not just financial, towards these things like getting more time with my family, spending quality time with friends, being able to make flexible decisions about fulfilling work and whatever it might mean for me as far as the ways that I invest in my faith.
So great. I mean, that is such it's that deeper work, right? It is a deeper level and it's not right, and not saying that you can't spend money on the things that you see and want, absolutely. And but yes, tying it more to this holistic approach with these 4 Fs. I like how you broke that down. That was really gives people a really great place to start and to start journaling and thinking deeper on these other areas of their life that might be the part that they're missing in finding fulfillment in where they're putting their money or their time. And yes, I'm a big proponent that your space doesn't necessarily need to be Insta worthy. I'm not an Insta worthy house. That's not what I teach you to do, but definitely where it just makes you feel fulfilled and where you can then tap into these deeper needs. I think that really brings it all together, that full circle moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But speaking of journaling, actually to bring a little bit more of a tangible element to this,
Yeah.
because I know so much of what we're talking about here is this deeper work, this understanding that we need to have, and it can feel really ethereal to a lot of people. And for something tangible that we can be doing in aligning our spending more with our values is doing a 90-day transaction inventory. So this just includes gathering up all of your transactions, whether it be through bank statements, credit card statements, you name it, and compiling that all into a spreadsheet or printing it out. And we say 90 days because usually 3 months can give us a really good glimpse of a snapshot of a season, the different nuances that can occur. It's not going to gather everything, but it's going to give us a really good picture. And once we have all of this compiled, including what we might assume to be fixed expenses, so we're still including bills and housing costs and all of those things, but going through and creating another column next to all of those transactions and essentially creating journal entries. Not long, this doesn't have to be a super arduous process, but beginning to identify with each of those transactions what prompted that spending, what came just before it? How did I feel about this transaction? Did it meet a need? What value would I say that this is attached to? How did I feel about this purchase afterwards? You don't have to ask all those questions for each of the transactions, but kind of a general sense of how we want to move through the list. And it could take hours, and you could spread this out over a couple of days to really get a good handle on it. But usually what we see come up for people, including ourselves, is we start to recognize some patterns in our spending. We can start to identify what our impulse purchases are linked to,
Mhm.
when we're most likely to impulse buy. The purchases that we did feel really good about and feel really confident in, and the ones that we may be feeling some regret over, wishing that was something that we hadn't have spent on, and maybe even beginning to identify alternatives to having bought that thing, possibly even prompting us to return a couple of things if we're within the window of
Yeah.
returns. That's possible too. And as you can see, then leading to other stages of observation and maybe some spending changes, some interruptions. But we don't need to jump there. I know a lot of times we want to
Mm.
jump to that action step, but really giving ourselves an opportunity. I love to phrase it like this: valuing ourselves enough to learn more about who we are, how we tick,
Mm.
how we spend. And one other piece I want to share about the 90-day transaction inventory is when we're asking ourselves these questions about our transactions, to approach it with curiosity. And one of the ways that we can do that is by avoiding the why question. We like to say that why is a no at this stage because why can really put us on the defense. It
Mm.
is the difference between why am I always going to Target and spending so much money to what is it about Target that leads me to spend this? What am I seeking to fulfill or satiate when I'm going to Target? We can see how those questions put us in a much different mind frame from instant fight mode to, I wonder about that. Let me dig
Hmm.
deeper. What is it about me and the things that I need and the way that I tick that I engage in this way? And those types of questions can then lead us to greater understanding about our behaviors, followed by ways we can shift that. But that comes down the road. We can really get a good glimpse of our values and how aligned our spending is with our values just through that 90-day transaction inventory.
Oh, brilliant. Well, I love that. I love that it's so tangible. It's something that somebody can do right when they're done listening to this episode. They can at least download those 90 transaction or the 90 days of transactions and then take their time looking through them, having a moment, just looking at them. I think sometimes it's really interesting when I do this for just expenses when I'm working on business expenses and things like this. And I go through my transactions and I'm like, I don't even know what that was, right? Sometimes it takes a little bit of digging to figure out what you even spent the money on. And I think that in and of itself is really eye opening just to realize that within a month, 2 months, you can totally forget what you spent money on at the beginning. So I think that's always one of my fun little ahas from those two of just, but absolutely want to do this 90-day transaction inventory and just go back through and have those questions that what, look at it with a curiosity and avoid why. No whys. I love that tip because it's interesting, right? Such a small little word
Yeah.
can create such guilt in us. And yes, going from a what perspective of what is it about this? What happened
Mhm.
the day before? What happened that day? How did I feel the next day? And like looking at it from that perspective, I think is absolutely brilliant. So, Jill, thank you so much for all of this amazing information. This was a really fun conversation to have, even though I felt a little guilty through some of it, but absolutely a great conversation. And I know people are going to want to know more about you. So, tell us, where can we find you?
Oh, well, this has been so lovely, Deanna. Thanks for having me on. It's been a pleasure to talk with you and your listeners.
You.
I also put out a podcast 2 times a week called Frugal Friends. You can listen wherever you get podcasts. And we also wrote a book, Buy What You Love Without Going Broke. You can purchase it at buywhatyoulovebook.com.
Love it. Okay. Well, we will definitely have links to all of that in the show notes so people can find you. But my favorite way to end every episode is with 3 rapid fire questions. So, my first one to you today is, what does clutter free mean to you?
When my stuff has a purpose and a place in my home.
So true. All right. Number 2, what is making you happy right now or in this season of your life?
Lately, it's been spending time with friends and trying new things, like going to trivia night weekly. That's been
Ooh,
so fun.
Ooh, that sounds fun. I've never
Oh, I'm
done
no
that.
good at it, but it's
Oh,
very fun.
that's okay. You don't have to be good at things for them to be fun.
Exactly.
And then number 3, what's a goal you have for yourself this year?
I have set a goal to read 15 books this year, which for me is a lot. I know there's probably some avid readers listening, and that's nothing. But
Yeah.
for me, I'm going from an average of 1 to 2 books a year. So I'm really ramping it up to 15 this year.
Yeah, awesome. Physical books or like
Physical books
some
and audiobooks. I'm
okay,
allowing myself both. Mhm.
nice. Okay, fantastic. Any favorites so far?
I really enjoyed The Grace Year. It's a dystopian, if you like
Yeah,
dystopian
that sounds fun.
literature. Yeah.
Okay, the Grace year. I'll have to look it up. Awesome. Well, Jill, thank you so much. This has been wonderful. I can't wait to hear how listeners implement this 90-day transaction and just all this wonderful information you've given us. So thank you so much.
Lovely. Thanks, Deanna.
Cheers. All right, what did you think? Did you like that conversation? Jill offered us a lot of interesting takes and a lot of interesting scientific backup for why having a simple living space is really going to help us not only just simplify our finances, but work in so many different areas of our life. So I love that approach. But I would love to know what you thought of this episode. So if you have a minute, go ahead and come on over to Instagram and comment over there. I am at Wannabe Clutter Free on the social channels, or you can join the community on Facebook at the Wannabe Minimalist Family Group over there and join in the conversation in that private community. But thank you so much for joining me today. I appreciate that you make this part of your weekly routine, and I hope you loved what you heard. If you did, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on any future episodes. And a special thank you to Jill for sharing her expertise and helping us simplify our life and understand why it's so important that we do so. All right, that's it for this week. Until next time, take care, keep things simple. Try out that 90-day transaction inventory and see what it brings up for you. Remember, don't use why though, use what and be curious about it. And remember, I believe in you. I'm Deanna Yates, and you've been listening to Wanna Be Clutter Free. I'll see you next week. Cheers.